These days, to hear your electric guitar, you don't have to have one of these big, heavy, cumbersome things, a guitar amp. You can just use one of these with some amp sim software running on it. Who wouldn't want that? Hello, home music creators. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about and you don't know what an amp sim is, well, it's quite simply a piece of software that you can install on your computer, and it will effectively turn your computer into a guitar amplifier. Now, to an extent, amp sims are controversial because I think people think that they're trying to replace guitar amps. I would argue that they're not. I think there will always be a place for real guitar amps, and some guitar players will always say that they'll never ever play through amp sims and always prefer a real amp. That's absolutely fine. But there is definitely a place for amp sims today, and they do have some advantages, which is what this video is all about. Let's clear up one thing. Today's amp sims sound great. When they first came on the market, sort of 25 years ago, they were definitely the poor cousin to real amps in terms of sound quality. But these days, the technology has improved so much that, yeah, they really do sound great. And they're perfectly usable, especially in a full mix. And they're definitely usable for things like recording. And I would defy anyone to tell an amp sim from a real amp in a full mix. And that leads me on to what I consider to be the main advantage of amp sims, which is recording in a home studio, such as I've got here. Now, I'm not talking about a professional studio here who will have, may well have a collection of fantastic vintage tube amps with engineers and the expertise to mic them up properly, and you get a great sound that way. Yeah, that I think is still the best way to record guitars in a pro studio. But if you're in a small little home hobby studio like this one, amp sims just provide so much convenience and so much ease of use. Miking up a real amp is difficult, and to get a good sound, it takes years and years of experience and practice. With an amp sim, essentially all that is done for you. All you do is you plug your guitar into your audio interface, your interface is plugged into the computer, and then on a track in your DAW, you just spin up an instance of whichever amp sim you're using, and then you have your amp models, effects models, all there right in front of you just to choose from. And in this situation, you have all those different sounds to choose from in the software right in front of you. If you were trying to do that with real amps and real pedals, you would actually have to physically swap out the amp and swap out the pedals, which is obviously much more of a pain in the arse. And that leads nicely onto a further advantage, which is you can change the sound after you've recorded it. If you wanted to do that with a real amp, again, you'd have to re-record the track using the other equipment that you wanted to replace the original equipment with. With an amp sim, you just change the sound. If you don't like what you've recorded with, you just change it to something else that the amp sim provides. I'll give you a quick demo of that. So this is a track of mine in Reaper, which is the DAW I use. This is called Cyanide Chaser, and I've just soloed this guitar track here. I'll just play you a few seconds of it. Okay, so there we are. That was the sound I used originally to record this track in an amp sim called Bias FX, which is one that I particularly like and have used a lot. I'll leave a link down in the description below. Now, I've recorded that guitar part with this sound, but I don't have to stick to it. So if we just play this, and I'll just switch to some other guitar sound. And another one. So there you see, switching the guitar sound to something different is just as simple as pressing a button and selecting a different preset in the amp sim. Moving on from that, another big advantage of a lot of amp sims is the sheer amount of equipment that is available in them. So I've just run up another amp sim here. This one's called Amplitude. And if we have a look, let's just have a look at this, this collection of menus on the right hand side. So These are the different amps that are available in Amplitube. And I should point out that this is just the free version of Amplitube as well. I've not paid for any of this. This is just what you get in the free version. There is a paid version as well, which will give you even more available models and sounds. So all these amp models, we've got clean models, crunch models, high gain models, even a few bass amps in there. And then look at the effects pedals as well. We got all these, we've got some delay pedals, distortion and overdrive pedals, compressors, EQs, modulation pedals, fuzzes, loads of stuff. All this stuff available just in the software running on your computer screen. Again, if you wanted to do this physically, obviously, you know, to buy all this stuff, you'd be spending thousands, probably tens of thousands of pounds. Now, the sound quality is another thing that amp sims have come on leaps and bounds in over the last few years. And I'll just play you an extract of this track of mine again. All the electric guitars were recorded using amp sims, Bias FX2 in this case. And I'll just play you the whole mix so you can make your own mind up what you think of the sound quality. Now, I hope that comes across on YouTube audio, just how good that sounds. With all this provided for you by a piece of software in your computer, there's really no need to buy a real amp anymore if you don't want to. You know, amps are expensive, they're heavy, they take up space, and if you already own a computer and an audio interface, you can get amp sims completely for free. So your amp effectively is right there in your computer, along with, you know, music to play along to, everything else that your computer can give for you. It's great for, say, you know, taking your guitar to a hotel. Obviously, you wouldn't want to be carrying a big heavy amp around to a hotel, I wouldn't have thought. And that convenience is a huge advantage of amp sims. And as I've mentioned, there are free ones available. Just Google free amp sim. Two that I personally recommend and I've used are Amplitube, which I've already demonstrated, and Guitar Rig. Both of those have a free version and have lots of different sounds, amp models and effects models in there completely for free. Now, one area that I haven't made the leap to amp sims in is live use. If I'm playing a gig, I still use a good old traditional guitar amp. But there are people who do use amp sims for live use. You get all the same advantages of when you're using them for recording, you know, that huge variety of sounds, all in one neat package. It also can help keep the volume down on stage, because if you've got your amp sim plugged into an audio interface and your computer, you can take the line out from that audio interface and just plug it straight into the PA, giving the sound guy, you know, full control over the mix, for which they will love you for. And of course, there's the portability aspect. You know, a laptop and an audio interface are a hell of a lot easier to carry around than, you know, a couple of 412 cabs or whatever you might be using. But, I mean, we have to mention the main drawback of amp sims for live use, and that is computers crash. Amplifiers don't. So if you were to use it for live use, I would make sure you had some sort of backup system there, you know, even if that's just another laptop running, you know, exactly the same amp sim that you're using on your main system, so you can switch to it in the event of a problem. Computers are a lot more reliable these days than they used to be, however, they still crash. And one last application for amp sims is, of course, using them in a rehearsal. Again, if you don't want to cart your big amplifier around to rehearsal, instead, just take your laptop audio interface and plug the output of the audio interface into the PA. So there we go. There are some of the advantages of amp sims and some of the reasons to use them. And they're not for everybody, that's fine. I've had several guitar playing friends say to me they'll never use amp sims, and that's, you know, there's no problem with that. That's absolutely fine. I still use real amps all the time. I also use amp sims all the time. And of course, real amps do have some advantages. You know, there's no messing around with the computer or installing software. You just turn it on, plug in and play. And there's a particular feel and response to playing through a real amp that amp sims can't really replicate. And that, you know, feeling of, you know, the moving air coming from the speakers of the guitar amp when you turn it up loud, yeah, that can't be replicated, you know, in a situation like this with a piece of software running on a computer. But I think if you're willing to try amp sims, especially in a home studio environment like this, I think you'll be glad that you did, especially for recording, because it stops you having to do all that messing around with miking up a real guitar amp and trying to find the perfect place for the microphone on the speaker to get a decent sound and all that rigmarole. Thanks for watching. This is Paul from Home Music Creator signing off. See you in the next video.